how bodybuilding destroys the planet. So I want to talk to you guys about 3 separate questions. So the first question I want to bring up is, why do people bodybuild? I've compiled a list of genuine reasons written by bodybuilders themselves as to why people bodybuild. Some men feel inferior when they're the smallest guy in a group, so they train themselves to feel better. Obviously, this particular reason is because of insecurity. People want to feel better about themselves, and so they look to bodybuilding. Some people get into bodybuilding as revenge to their ex. I guess people feel insecure when their ex leaves, and one of the reasons they think their ex left is because they don't look good enough. And so they take to bodybuilding in order to make themselves look more attractive, and so that their ex will later on feel like, oh, I made a mistake because this person is more attractive than I thought they were. So some people bodybuild because of the sport that they do. Of course, when you look into the Olympics, people really need to push their body to the maximum in order to achieve superhuman ability. Whether or not that is something that humans should be focusing on is a different question. Of course, there are people who get into it for the reason of sport in the beginning, who then later become addicted to bodybuilding, and it's all about pushing your levels and going as far as you possibly can. Quotes by bodybuilders as to why they're bodybuilding. I always was the smallest of all the guys around me, especially my friends that worked out. I wanted to get bigger so guys would stop hitting on my girl, especially right in front of me. This again is something that's really coming about as insecurity. Somebody feels that they will have a better life if they have a bigger body because they will get more respect. Got another quote here. It gives me more emotional and mental stability. I think people have different ways of having more emotional and mental stability. I would also say that maybe you could get it from something else that wasn't bodybuilding. I like a lot the feeling of strength and easiness of movements. So again, that's something I understand. Like, we should be healthy and fit. And I would definitely condone getting into sport and exercising. I think that's good for the human body. But again, I think you could get that feeling from maybe less aggressive practices. So another person says quite directly, I like how it looks. We're constantly blasted with perfect bodies online, on movies, and when you see this portrayed as perfection the entire time, then you feel that in order to be perfect, you have to build such a body for yourself. Unnatural bodies have been idolized by the industry, especially the fashion industry and the film industry, and because unnatural bodies have been idolized, people have begun to believe that that's what they naturally require in order to have success in life. This is a quote from a female bodybuilder. She says, it feels good to walk into the gym, to walk into a weight room and lift more than a guy. Whereas I do really understand where you get that feeling from. Again, I think that's kind of insecure and trying to prove yourself, to prove that you're good enough to people. I also read separate accounts that some women who are skinny feel that bodybuilding will give them a curvy body, which they think of as more attractive. And again, that's that whole kind of image that you have to get to a certain body state in order to be successful and attractive in this life. And I find that honestly quite sad. I think we're born with our body build and our genetics. I think everybody is beautiful in their own way. That's pretty much just sums up why people get into bodybuilding. Ultimately, it's mainly out of insecurity, which is quite interesting. It's to make people feel better about themselves, and often to do with attracting a partner. What impact does bodybuilding have on the environment? Which is question 2. I'm going to focus on one particular bodybuilder here and his diet, which is Dwayne Johnson, otherwise known as The Rock. Over a period of 10 years, Dwayne Johnson consumes 7,300 codfish, 1,820 chickens, 4 entire cows, and 25,550 eggs, which is an insane amount of food. Just the fish alone is absolutely crazy. In comparison, the average human in America over the same period of time will eat the equivalent of 150 codfish, 910 chickens, 4/5 of a cow, and 2,790 eggs, which is still a lot. But that means that Dwayne Johnson ate 48 times more fish, twice as many chickens, 5 times more cows, and 9 times more eggs than the average person in America over a period of 10 years, which is definitely not a sustainable amount. Dwayne Johnson's favorite fish is cod. It's an endangered fish due to overfishing. They're officially listed as vulnerable to extinction. In the UK, the population of cod is down to 10% of what it was 30 years ago, and it was already very low 30 years ago. So needless to say, focusing your diet on a species like cod is very damaging to the environment. I guess it's also needless to say, the amount of food that's consumed by a bodybuilder like Dwayne Johnson is obviously going to impact the environment quite seriously. The production of meat is widely accepted as the most environmentally damaging farming practice, meaning that a bodybuilder like Dwayne Johnson does up to 10 times more damage to the environment than one average meat-consuming person. Vegan diets are seen as up to half as damaging to the environment in regard to carbon emissions, meaning that a diet like Dwayne Johnson's is equivalent to feeding up to 20 vegans when you take into account the destruction created to the environment. When you think that one person has so much of an impact on the planet in order to gain a good physique, or what we consider to be a good physique, I would really counter that maybe such bodybuilding practices aren't really sustainable. When you think that the diets of 20 people are equivalent to one bodybuilder in this instance, that is absolutely insane. I don't want to keep picking on Dwayne Johnson. As far as I know, he's a really nice guy. It's just unfortunately he published his diet online, so I was able to find out the information. I want to have a look at another famous bodybuilder who pioneered much of the industry, because bodybuilding is actually a relatively new thing to humanity. Arnold Schwarzenegger is commonly considered to be one of the pioneers of modern bodybuilding. His favorite post-workout meal was an entire roasted chicken and a pitcher of beer, and that's nearly 2 liters of beer. So he would eat a whole chicken after working out and drink 2 liters of beer, or nearly 2 liters of beer. What's really interesting about Arnold Schwarzenegger is later on in life, he kind of did a U-turn. One of Arnold Schwarzenegger's doctors recommended he eliminate meat from his diet for health reasons. And Schwarzenegger now recommends that people cut down and eliminate meat from their diets. So Arnold Schwarzenegger has gone from eating one whole chicken after a workout to telling people, cut down on meat, eliminate your meat. An interesting thing is one of the kind of icons of bodybuilding. Bodybuilding is not very good for the environment. I think that's clear. When you think one person consumes over 7,000 fish over a period of 10 years, and an endangered fish, that really is not acceptable in this day and age when we're thinking about how to be sustainable and how to protect our future as humanity. So number 3, is there a greener way to bodybuild? Vegan bodybuilding is a massive trend right now. It's becoming more and more fashionable, and you see all these new accounts rising up with how to be a vegan bodybuilder. I would say definitely compared to a traditional meat-based bodybuilding diet, it's much better for the environment and for your health. However, you still need to eat 5 or 6 meals a day. You're still eating far more than a usual human being, and ultimately your impact on the environment is going to be much bigger, because the more you eat, the more damage you create. It's just unfortunately the logic. Tofu is regularly eating, or soya products, by bodybuilders in the vegan realm. Lots of rainforest has been cleared out to make way for soya plantations. Because of this massive rise in demand for soya, with the massive boom in veganism, more rainforest is being cleared in order to support growing more soya. Even if you get soya products that come from a farm which doesn't contribute to destroying the rainforest, you're overall building up the demand for soya products, and that means that ultimately more needs to be grown and rainforest will be destroyed. Quinoa is another power grain. Until relatively recently, it wasn't very popular and most people didn't know what it was. And now it's boomed in popularity, so much so that the people who used to rely on it as a staple part of their diet in Peru and Bolivia can no longer afford it because the prices have skyrocketed. Now it's cheaper for people in Bolivia to buy chicken than to buy quinoa, although there's quinoa fields all around. Because the demand for quinoa has risen so much, they've really intensively farmed, which has resulted in the earth degenerating and being practically useless to farming. It's causing untold damage to the people's lives in those countries, and it's causing damage to the environment. So if you're a vegan bodybuilder, you have to really look carefully at what you're actually eating if you don't want to damage the environment. Several online bodybuilding diets also suggest other environmentally damaging fruit and vegetables like asparagus. Research by Angelina Frankowska, who studies sustainability in the University of Manchester, recently found that asparagus eaten in the UK has the highest carbon footprint compared to any other vegetable eaten in the country, with 5.3 kilograms of carbon dioxide being produced for every kilogram of asparagus, mainly because much of it is imported by air from Peru. That's really interesting because asparagus is another vegetable that's often recommended in a bodybuilding diet for a vegan bodybuilder. Overall, I would say, in terms of bodybuilding, if there's a green way to bodybuild, yes. If you go vegan, it's greener, you're causing less damage to the environment. But if you want to be really green about it, you can't just be vegan. You've got to also source locally. Just get fruit and vegetable that grows locally to support your diet. That's going to cause much less damage to the environment. It's what you should be naturally eating within your area. I would also rather controversially argue that in Scotland, for example, it's actually better for the environment to eat wild deer than it is to eat asparagus. I guess it's going to be a massive shock for me to say that for any vegans listening, or for people who disagree with eating meat. But if you have a look at the problems in Scotland, hundreds of years ago, we eradicated the natural predators. Wolves, bears and lynx are all extinct in Scotland because humans killed them off. That meant the deer had nothing to control their populations. As a side effect, the forest can't regenerate in Scotland because the deer keep eating it down, and they eat all of the saplings and shoots down, so the forests don't grow. There are too many deer in Scotland for the ecosystem to function properly. And so humans have had to fulfill the role of the predator. It could be argued that we should reintroduce wolves to control the deer population so there's once more a natural, healthy ecosystem. However, that's not happened yet, and it might never happen because of all of the sheep farming that goes on in the UK. In the meantime, tens of thousands of deer get culled every year in Scotland, and that is a lot of meat that needs to be culled to protect the environment here, and lots of animals as well. You've got to think locally and study your food diet. Have a look at what you're actually eating, and specifically to the country that you're in, have a look at what is the best option there. And I think the answers are out there. You just have to do a bit of research. However, I will end the article in saying overall that I think most people bodybuild for maybe not necessarily the best reasons. And ultimately, it's quite often a selfish practice, if not always a selfish practice to bodybuild. Best for the environment is if we don't bodybuild, yes, stay fit and exercise, but we don't need to gain massive biceps. There's no point in having giant muscles. People around us also think, hey, this guy's working out, he's bodybuilding, he's looking good, he's getting attention. That's what guys in movies look like. I need to do that now. And we should not be feeding into that cycle. We should be saying, hey, this is the body I naturally have. This is what nature has given me, and I will look after it, but I'm not going to try and force it to be something that it's not. That's my own personal opinion on bodybuilding. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have any thoughts or questions, let me know, and please leave something in the comments. All the best.